Josh. Great, thanks. Okay, everyone. Today we have consensus layer call 150. Let me grab the agenda here. I'll put it in the chat. So it's issue 1265 on the PM repo. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. There's a number of things today around Pectra and some other fun stuff. So to start with Pectra, we have DevNet 6 that is launched, and yeah, the DevNet looks like it's gone much, much better than DevNet 5, which is good to see. Would anyone here like to say any more about the status of the DevNet or any updates? Are there any issues we should discuss now? Okay, put a link here in the chat to Dora. Yeah, DevNet looks good.
Yeah, maybe just note on one thing that's still partially missing on the DevNet. So we do have some map blocks being produced by the blocks root relay. We're still in the process of setting up the flashbots relay ourselves. There were a couple of changes in there that took a bit longer to integrate into our Ansible stack. But we should have some information probably after the call or early tomorrow. And that should close up the MEV testing issue cycle as well.
Okay, great. And we did exercise at least the client pathways with the mock builder. I think I saw a message to that effect in
Yeah,
DevNet 5.
exactly. So we've already
Yeah.
tested with the mock builder and it was fine. And we also tested it locally on kurtosis and we didn't notice any bugs in itself. But there was a request to make sure that there's execution requests in the MEV produced blocks as well. And that's one thing we should definitely check and we haven't yet.
Okay, cool. Then other than that, any client issues that we should be aware of, or do we want to call DevNet 6 generally a success? Okay. Perry says nothing worth discussing, which is good to hear. I think there are like a few small things just to flag it. On the Discord, I saw that Lighthouse didn't conform to an API, I think, which I think is a pretty easy fix, but just something to be aware of. And what else? So there was also a question here about the beacon APIs. And let's see, I think this is from Paul. Can we get a more final spec so that we can update the beacon API references? Is Paul on the call here?
Yeah, so just in terms of that, just need to have effectively the release version so that all the references can be to the actual Electro release rather than alphas or betas at some point. If we're getting
Okay.
close to releasing, it'd be good to actually have a release of the spec.
Yeah. Was this blocking anything?
We just can't cut the release until we have that ideally for the
Gotcha.
beacon API.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, generally, I think how we do it is once we feel like the beta series is good to go, then we would cut the actual spec for Pectra, which it sounds like we're very close to. I don't know if we're quite ready, but we will be soon. So yeah, I can reach out and or follow up on the beacon APIs once we're closer to that. So cool. Anything else on Pectra on the CL side? I did want to flag the 7702 mempool on the EL side because it came up other places this week. But yeah, any CL things before we move to that?
I've been working on some tests on the east side. It's a little bit hard to pin down exactly what behavior we want to see, but I'm gonna try to keep um, the expected behavior to like some logical stuff that is not including uh, transactions that would make the block invalid and such stuff. But yeah, we're working on it. I'm gonna be running some tests on Hive this week. If I find anything, I will try to ping the clients with information. Yeah.
Okay. These tests are for 7702 or another EIP?
Yeah, exactly, for 7702. Yeah, and I say the issue is that I mean these tests are it's tricky to pin down exactly the behavior that we expect from the clients because there's nowhere in the specification that says, okay, you have to reject this type 4 transactions once they you have another transaction that is not type 4 or whatever. That kind of logic is not specified anywhere, and I think that's fine. But I think we can try to still make some tests, even without this specification. If it's not possible, I'm gonna see if I can find issues anyway. It just means that we might not be able to merge tests to east, for example. But yeah, I'm gonna try it out to see what the outcome is. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, from my understanding, it sounds like EL clients will want some special rules for 7702 around handling these transactions in the mempool. Right now, it sounds like there's partial support. It would be good to hear from different EL clients that are on the call, how much they're ready for this. But as far as I know, that was kind of the last big open question for Pectra. Like client says here in the chat, Geth pending PR. So like client would this PR basically block a Pectra release, say like a testnet release for Geth?
I think we're a little split on whether it would. Personally, I would really prefer to have this on our testnet release. I think it's not great to make the release and then continue iterating on some pretty core pieces of Pectra and then make a mainnet release that really hasn't had time to sit on the testnets a lot. Like we're closing in on merging this PR, so it should be around next week. I think that the times that were proposed kind of makes sense to us, but yeah, my preference is definitely to have this in before we release.
Yeah, that makes
Also,
sense.
I would encourage other ELs to go into this PR because it has some test cases in it. And I'm not saying that these test cases should apply to the rest of the clients, but it's important to at least think about it. And it's fine if you don't end up with the same logic, but just to think about it, it would be nice to have some feedback also. Please go into the R&D Discord into the EL testing and just chime in with your testing scenarios that you would like to see tested in your clients. Yep.
Cool. And that does tee us up for the next agenda item here, which is testnet fork timing. So there are at least two comments here to address. Tim has some candidates here. Let me just grab a link to this comment so everyone can look at it. And essentially, they're kind of all downstream of when we can get client testnet releases out. So there's a suggestion if we can do this by February 10th, which I believe is next Monday, then slots for Haleski and Sepolia, and then a plus 30-day mainnet slot. And then suggestions for February 13th releases, February 17th releases. The plus 30-day mainnet slot here came from another comment by Lee Derrick. And I guess I'll grab a link as well, just so people have it handy. That's here. So yeah, the request was essentially saying like, hey, you know, L2s, even applications, there's been some comments around this as well from say Lido and different staking pools. Essentially people using the L1 want some time, some lead time between when we have, you know, our testnet progression and mainnet. And the request was to basically say, okay, 30 days from the last testnet fork is when we would set the mainnet fork at the earliest. So that's the context for Tim's suggestions here. And there's, I guess, two questions here. First is like, do we feel like this 30-day buffer is good? Like maybe, you know, we could pipeline things a bit to have like a shorter amount of time in between testnet and mainnet. If not, then we have the 30 days here. And then otherwise, the big question I think for people today is when they feel comfortable getting client releases out. And there are a number of comments on the issue. Yeah, it might be hard to summarize them all, but it looks like generally either option 1 or option 2 in this comment that Tim has. So that would be releases by the 10th or February 13th. It does sound like many people feel February 10th would be a bit aggressive. Does anyone want to chime in for their client?
So for Lighthouse, I think it would be tough for us to get a release out by the 10th. So we were suggesting the 13th. We have like that one API fix, and we have another performance fix that we want to get in on the test nets.
Okay. Then if we go for the 13th, yeah, there's some other comments in the chat here around the 13th. So yeah, is anyone not okay with the 13th to have testnet releases? And so to be clear, February 13th, let me just double check my calendar. I believe that's next ACDE. So yeah, 1 week from now. And yeah, that would mean having Koleshki and Sepolia forks for Pectra by the 13th.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the mainnet slots I put there is like a placeholder, but I wouldn't expect us to put this in the release. It was just to show if we wait 30 days, you know, what's the earliest decent mainnet slot. But so then on next Alcore Devs, we would announce all the client releases, and then hopefully by the end of that day, if not early on the Friday, we'll have the blog post out with everyone's releases.
Great. Yeah, sounds good to me. And generally people are okay with 13th. So let's do that. So 1 week, be ready by next ACDE. Then Derek here is touching on the other comment here with the 30-day buffer. How do people feel about this? There was another comment by Frederick that from a security perspective, this is pretty good. Yeah, anyone want to try to shorten this, or do we feel like that's a good amount of time? And maybe just to make this concrete, going off the timelines here, releases next Thursday would mean mainnet slot, say, on April 8th. So that'd be Pectra mainnet. Does anyone want to try to be more aggressive with the timeline, or do we feel good about that? So Paul has a comment here that is dependent on the testnet. So this is all assuming that the testnets go well. And obviously, yeah, if there's an issue, we'll have to reorient. But in the optimistic case, we would do the testnets. They work great. And then we'd move on to mainnet 30 days later. Tim says on March 6th, we pick the slot.
Right. So assuming with the schedule, like we fork Sepolia on March the 5th, it goes well, then Alcore Devs is the next day. On the 6th, we can agree on the slot. Assuming everything goes well, we can use what I have here already. And that would give people like 31 day or whatever to, to update.
Yeah. That sounds good. One question is if that's enough time to assess Sepolia, because it'd only be like 1 day.
Is there something about this fork that will uniquely take time to find out on Sepolia that we wouldn't have seen on Hosky?
One thing we could imagine is just testing all of the different features, and there's a number of them. But yeah, I'm not sure how much we want to do like aggressive red teaming on Sepolia right at the fork boundary.
Yeah, I think we should probably test this on Holski in the week before, but like, and yeah, 7702. But my sense is if we wait for everyone to be ready to support 7702, we're only going to fork next year. And that's been effectively out. We've had the DevNet since DevCon that people can use. So I suspect not everything will have 7702 support on the day of the fork, but it's still better to fork earlier rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I mean, let's do that. Let's say what was that, the 5th? And then yeah, we have the call the next day and can make a call there. If we feel, yeah, if Haleski is kind of weird or we feel something comes up in the meantime that would want us to wait a little bit to watch Sepolia, we can do that. But sounds like we should tentatively plan for calling mainnet then. And yeah, Frederick says, yeah, we could always adjust it if we need to. Cool. Okay. We're so close to Pectra. Very exciting. Great. Okay, so client releases in a week and for testnets, and yeah, then we'll keep moving along. Any other points on Pectra we should discuss right now? Then we will move on. So the next set of items are around PeerDAS, scaling the blobs. I think there have been some pretty exciting developments with DevNets there. Would anyone be able to give an update on DevNet 4? I think that's one that launched recently or did launch. I couldn't make the breakout this week.
Yeah, I can give an update on that. So we've been doing PeerDAS DevNet for testing mostly locally and on kurtosis, and we've had a few runs running over multiple days, and it's been quite good and stable. And we decided yesterday to then launch the public DevNet, so PeerDAS DevNet 4. I've been trying to get that up and running today, and I'm close, but it might happen again a few hours after this call or so, and I'll post information in the PeerDAS testing channel. But essentially, it's exactly what we have on kurtosis, so it should be fine.
Great, amazing. And there were plans to then move to DevNet 5, assuming DevNet 4 is good. Any blockers there that we should surface right now?
I think the main change is validator custody, and we're still figuring out what other changes we want to plan for in DevNet 5. But I think we're still discussing what changes would exist there.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to see progress. And yeah, we'll be waiting to see how DevNet 4 goes. Okay. Anything else then on PeerDAS for the moment?
Yeah, so Jimmy asked me to bring up a couple of things. One was the idea of shifting proof building responsibilities to the transaction sender. From Jimmy's point of view, is important for this so that we could scale the number of blobs in PeerDAS past 16. The transaction sender would build KZG proofs and sell proofs. Oh, right now I think KZG proofs are built by the transaction sender, but sell proofs are built by CLs. And there's a computation bottleneck here. And if the transaction sender is computing sell proofs, we can shave off the proof computation time during block proposal. So yeah, wanted to raise that. And then also wanted to discuss the idea of blob parameter only forks, because that's another thing that would allow us to, I guess, start with a lower blob count on PeerDAS and increase it without having to wait for the next hard fork.
Yeah. We had discussed this proof point at DevCon, and I think, yeah, okay, so there's some notes here from Francesco. And yeah, I think there were a few options here. The current situation is downstream of the fact that we didn't want to move this computation into the EL, but especially if it is helpful, given all of the block timings, then that's something we can explore for sure. Okay, yeah. And Francesco, when you say they agreed with it, then you mean moving the cell proofs basically into the EL?
Yeah, I mean, at least whoever was in the breakout room at DevCon, no one raised any objection to that at the time. And then we also talked about it again in the distributed block building call, and same thing, no one had any objection to that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and again, I think the only real argument was just a separation of concerns between EL and CL because it brings a lot of cryptography into the EL that the CL kind of can handle on its own. But yeah, as long as no one feels strongly about that point, and this helps, especially scaling, I say we do it.
Okay, nice. Thank you.
Cool. And then the other point on BPO forks, yeah. I think where I am on this is just waiting to see how the devnets go with PeerDAS. And yeah, if we get to a place where we want to start with a lower count than what's theoretically possible, then something like BPO I think would make a lot of sense. Essentially ship PeerDAS with like a smaller number, and then just, best case, we do commit to say like, every few months we bump up the ball count by this amount. And then yeah, have this sort of like on rails upgrade pipeline up until whatever we're comfortable with for the PeerDAS max. We have had a little time since this BPO idea was introduced. Has anyone else had any more thoughts about this? Do we generally feel good with the idea? I'll ask a question. Do we have a target at a time for blobs? Yeah, I think the specifics will kind of depend on how the devnets go. So PeerDAS itself gives us a 8x sort of theoretical upper bound, and what I would like is just to ship PeerDAS with that number. If for some reason we don't feel comfortable with that, then yeah, we'll need to find a different option. And BPO is like a good tool if we need to do something that scales. Dustin, I don't really follow your comment here. Maybe you're replying to Paul.
No, sorry, I'll clarify. The thing with the scaling is, at least my understanding, and this has been one of the tensions for going back, I guess, a while with PeerDAS, the proposer still has to send enough out, or whoever sends the block out, somebody has to send all of the, I mean, whether they be a sufficient number of columns or blobs, that still has to happen. And currently PeerDAS is set at a factor of 2, so you need half the columns to reconstruct everything, 64 of the 128, which means that it's the factor of 8 still doesn't really, that can help in certain cases, but it doesn't account for, like, somebody needs to have the bandwidth.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess that was another big vertical here was essentially the question of local block building. And I think there's a number of solutions there around how we'd still be able to scale the blobs while preserving some amount of local building. There was this idea of like having some flag in the clients that as a local node, you could set the maximum that you want in the event that, PeerDAS and the protocol scales past what you have available for your local bandwidth. So there were diverging opinions on that in the past, but something else to keep on our radar as we move into PeerDAS R&D. Okay. Anything else on PeerDAS? Otherwise, I think we keep training on the devnets, and hopefully that gives us more information to keep moving forward. Okay. Then next on the agenda, so that was PeerDAS, and then yeah, we had a number of things around research, spec, different things to call out. The first one should be pretty brief, just an announcement around hardware and bandwidth requirements. So Kevin and others have been working on this EIP, which I would imagine is an informational EIP. I'll grab this link here, but essentially it just puts down in text recommendations for node requirements. And yeah, Kev, was there anything to add here? I think mainly the call out was just to take another look at this PR.
Yeah, I wanted to see what people were saying about the max blobs flag that we had in the previous ACD. Because yeah, once we have max blobs flagged, then we wouldn't need to sort of constrain the network to the bandwidth of local block builders who are home staking.
Okay. So does anyone here oppose this idea moving forward with the max blobs flag?
I think I put something on the PR just because I'd previously suggested something similar. So basically for local block building, and it got met with a bit of resistance, but I'm not against the idea generally.
I'm on.
Yeah, I'm also not against that idea in general. I'm just like against any trend that that has been surfacing a little bit lately about disregarding solo stakers and doing local block building, or not prioritizing local block building because it's dying out anyways. I do believe that having a resilient network requires that local block building, falling back to local block building is always available, regardless of whatever mechanism. And if this is something that is planned for Pectra, then that maybe is fine. But if it is something that is planned for a more aggressive push on blobs for Fusaka, for example, then I would say that we need a more permanent solution to this problem, something that would still allow solo stakers and home stakers to participate in local block building if they ever have to, without compromising on their fees that they receive from potential blobs that they can post on this. And this is this is why one of the things that I have also done in this call, I think you were getting at it later on, is I proposed the PPS for Fusaka. I understand that it's not a small thing to do, or that it's easy to do fork. It's very complex, but it could be. It is a solution to a lot of problems, and it also have a lot of advantages that other research and incidents have shown us before. I wouldn't want to waste more time of everyone's time on this, so I'll stop here.
Okay, thanks. Ansgar, you had your hand up, although it just went away.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think there are more minimally invasive changes we could make to also retain local block building capabilities. I put a sketch of one idea in the chat. I mean, I think ePBS in general seems great. I'm not convinced we should have it considered even for Fusaka necessarily, just because it seems like too complex. But yeah, I don't think that a good argument for it would be specifically the local building, because I think there are much lighter weight solutions for that.
Okay. Terrence had a question around the max blobs flag. Have we brought this up in a roll call? It might affect L2s in some sort of way. Yeah. Has this come up? Does anyone know? In a roll call?
We have another roll call next week, so we can bring it up there and then report back.
Nice. Yeah, I think running it by L2s there would be nice. Terrence, was there something specific you had in mind?
No, it's just today the blob pricing is determinate, right? You know exactly what the target and max is. So as a layer two, I can look at the mempool. I can have some predictive algorithm. I can predict the next few slots of the blob price. Then I can kind of batch post optimally, right? But with this, it's like I probably do not know who are the validators that's constraining blobs that's proposing in the next epoch. Because of that, the blob pricing may slightly vary in some way. I'm not sure this is like a blocker, but it will be nice to let the consumer of the blobs know that. And I think layer two are the biggest consumer so far.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess this is in the average case, it wouldn't really affect L2s, right? Because most of the blocks that are being built are not by local block builders.
Yeah, for sure. But you can imagine today we have a finality incident, right? And say today we're missing more than 3 slots per epoch, then things will change. And I'm just saying that the layer two should know this, basically.
Right. Okay, I see.
Hey, quick question to you guys. So I brought up before about like open references or guides, or really just like data pools, statistic pools, whatever you want to call it, in terms of people being able to reference as guidance for something like the block flag. I mean, excuse me, the blob flag, the max blob flag that we're discussing. Is there something like that? Like, for example, I know that my bandwidth it only supports like 25 megabits per second down or so, and whatever, let's say maybe 25 up. This is what would make sense for me to set my max blob size to be, rather than it just seems like right now we're like, okay, perhaps this flag will be helpful in us limiting, but then there's the question of how much knowledge and experience and info do people have in terms of how to properly set that flag.
Right. I agree with this. I think we need something like that in general. Essentially, what is the maximum amount we can go to for the protocol based on these assumptions? So I think we'd need that sort of anyways.
Right. I think he was asking like if we essentially how would I know as a say solo staker how to set this flag? So the thing is blobs are fixed size, so it should be a pretty straightforward calculation and clients can put out guidance. If you know how much bandwidth you have locally to dedicate to getting blobs out, then it should map really directly into some concrete number. That would be your max. Then the idea is just as you go to boot up your client, you put in that number, and then you should be good to go.
Cool. Sounds good.
I'm wondering if I haven't heard from Aragon on this. Is there anyone from Aragon that can say something?
You're just looking for their feedback on. Yeah, is this for the max blobs or for? Okay. Is anyone from Aragon on the call? I don't see anyone. Okay, we'll have to reach out similar way, Kev. But yeah, it would be good to get their input. Okay. And right, like I was referencing, so we did have a PR merge to set PFI for Fusaka for EIP 7732, which is the EIP for EPBS. I'll just grab a link here in case anyone wants it. It's 9291 on the IPs repo. And yeah, I don't really want to get into like Fusaka fork scoping today. We should focus on Pectra before we open that thread in earnest. But yeah, so it is PFI'd. And yeah, I I guess just, yeah, that's a heads up. And otherwise, we do have some time. So I did want to bring up at least the conversation of these Petra retrospectives. Tim started a thread on Ethereum magicians and has been collecting input. There have been a number of really interesting responses, so I would encourage everyone to go read through this thread. And there have been a number of client dev responses at various points here. I don't think we have everyone, but since we do have some time today, if there's any sort of early takeaways or points around Pectra and how that might inform how we move forward with hard fork planning and implementation, R&D, all of the above, now would be a good time to get into that. I think a big takeaway that a number of people had was just in terms of scoping, being more disciplined around how we actually do this. So, one thing you could imagine is that we basically, so like one concrete idea that I kind of like would basically be saying by, fork n, the scope of n plus one's already set. And then what that means is we don't have to like mix in the concerns of determining a hard fork while we're also building the current hard fork, which this is one thing we kind of did with Pectra, and it seems to lead to distractions. So that's some feedback I've seen from many people actually, and I think it's something we should really consider. I will flag Tim's comment here. It would be nice if we could get all the retros by next week. So if you're a client team and you're listening, if you could please add your thoughts, and I'll direct you to this Ethereum Magicians thread to get some more information there. But essentially, yeah, once we have all these, it'd be nice to kind of like go through some summary. I would even suggest taking like one specific ACD and dedicating it just to that. And yeah, then the idea would be to like pull out concrete suggestions for how to improve ACD moving forward so that we can, keep things smooth and improve the protocol. Any other retrospective points that anyone would like to get into at the moment?
Maybe, yeah, like one, as people send their retros, if we are going to seriously consider like, finalizing the scope of one fork as we start or as we ship it and as we ship the previous one, sorry, and then open the door for the next fork. In practice, this means the scope for Fusaka would be like frozen. And so I think it would be good for client teams to start reflecting on what that implies. My sense when I talk with people about this is everyone agrees in the abstract that yes, this would be great. And then 2 minutes after they propose an EIP that they obviously want in the fork because it's important. And so this is kind of the issue we always run into where it's, yeah, like if we want to make this commitment, right now there's two things in Fusaka, and this means everything else would go to the next fork. And we should, we're shipping Pectra in the next basically month or two. So we should, finalize that.
Right. So it would, to play it out, it would be like essentially going with the CFI Pectra we have CFI Fusaka that we have right now. Then anything around other EAPs would go into Glamsterdam, and the idea would be like we can churn on Fusaka, and then in parallel, perhaps even in some like slightly different forum, have the conversations around which actually EAPs go into Glamsterdam. Lukash?
One comment from me as a core dev is that it's sometimes hard to judge those EAPs, especially on their maturity of the specs, etc. Because sometimes we include something or consider something, but then it changes a few times more later, and that's something good to try to having to come up with some assessment of specs finality of EAPs. And I know you always have last minute changes sometimes, but it might be helpful to like to have this longer plan forward. So that's something to consider.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it does seem to be a pretty strict improvement. And yeah, the idea would be to like have fork scoping discussions for the next fork after the current fork. Obviously, yeah, as we like get into the R&D process, things change, but the idea would be to limit the scope of what we're talking about with respect to like these sorts of changes to just a small set, and then not also have to bring in a conversation. Oh, what if we did, this new EIP that we have dev nuts for on the side? Should that come into this fork? And yeah, the whole point is just to be more focused, and I have high conviction that more focus will make us move faster. Yeah, Trent has another comment enforcing basically EOLs or CL spec limitations. Yeah, that would definitely help. A big one is testing. So we should be very strict about no EIPs, possibly or even PFI'd without test, but definitely CFI'd. Any other preliminary thoughts? If not, then right. Any client teams who haven't put together a Pectra retrospective, please try to do so by next week. We'll keep moving there. And otherwise, in the meantime, if you have a few moments, take a look at the ETH Magicians thread. There's a lot of good content there. Cool. Let me grab the agenda over here. What else do we have? Okay, yeah. Frederick wanted to announce Pectra Bug Bounty Attackathon. Frederick, would you like to say some words about that?
Yeah, so usually for the hard forks, we add a 2x multiplier to the bug bounty program in order to get more people to basically review the code specific to the hard fork in hopes that we will find issues before they go live. This time we're doing a bug bounty competition instead with a $2 million, with a pool of up to $2 million depending on the findings. And we will be launching this after the client releases are ready. So I guess sometime after the 13th, most likely. Basically what we would like our ask is that client teams create this type of one-pager type of document, which is describing where the various security researchers should look for changes specific to Pectra in their client. This is basically just to make things a bit faster for the security researchers so they can quickly drill down on the code that's in scope of the competition, because non-Pectra's code will be out of scope. So please try to find some time to do that, because it will mean that security researcher will have a easier time potentially finding issues with your client. And on top of that, it would also be good if any dependencies that are being used by clients or the protocol could do the same. So if any dependencies being used have implemented changes specific to Pectra, then please do the same. And I think the easiest way to distribute this is probably through the R&D Discord. And you can send me a private message if you want. I'm Frederick on there, and then I'll make sure that this is all compiled for the competition itself. Thanks.
Yeah, great. And when you say, I guess, yeah, one question would be like, where could I go to follow the developments here, just get more information? Would there be like a Ethereum.org blog post announcing this after client releases?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll do that on the blog. We'll update the bounty.ethereum.org website to point to this competition as well, and we'll make some tweets as well. So we'll try to get the word out as much as possible. And of course, that's also something worth mentioning now that you say it. When we do run the competition, obviously, if the clients were able to help push the word out, that would also be appreciated, because we want as many people as possible to see that the competition is ongoing and partake in the competition to find flaws before Pectra hits mainnet.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Cool. So I think that was all we had on the agenda for the day. And let me just see if there are any more comments, but I think that's about it. Otherwise, yeah. Okay. Anything else anyone would like to bring up? Yeah, Kev, you have a get blobs question?
Yeah, so we've added get blobs, and I've been getting mixed answers about sort of how effective it is. Does anyone sort of have any ideas? Because it ranges from the proposer or local block builder no longer needs to send out the blobs to maybe they need to send out half. So yeah, I wanted to get some thoughts on get blobs. Oh, PeerDAS, yeah.
It's currently very effective. The time that you need to wait for DA availability, well, for DA now on blobs is almost zero. It would be much better though if the blocks would be sent earlier than the blobs, so that we even avoid bandwidth waste. But as of now, that feature has been reducing the amount of time that you need to wait for proving that the data was available to essentially zero on my local node here.
Oh, so that means that so the only bandwidth needed is from the block itself. And is it worst case now it's like 1 megabyte?
The worst case for the block. So
Yeah.
blocks are in average now 115 kbytes. I do not know what the worst case is though.
Okay, I see. Okay, yeah, that's super helpful. I guess then what is the limit on, because obviously we can't just scale to like a million blobs. Like what is the now bounding the limit on the number of blobs then, if it's not the block, if it's not the blob,
It's a mempool. It's a mempool, and this is dependent on ELs and how they implement it. So currently, it seems that all blobs fit in all mempools, and your local node will have all of the blobs because they are being published publicly. But definitely, this doesn't scale. So
right. Okay, I see. Yeah,
but we don't have to, like, I mean, why, like, it's very clearly easily possible for rollups to just like send their blobs directly to block builders or something. Like we can still keep the mempool for censorship resistance, but does every blob transaction have to go through the mempool?
No, that's fine. But then the thing is that then the get blob feature that Kev is asking about will not be helpful for anyone.
Right.
Oh, I see. Well, I guess if they send it to block builders, are we talking about via some MEV boost based strategy? Because bandwidth, I guess, is no longer an issue in that case either.
Well, it could still be on download, right? So imagine we have like 1,000 blobs and maybe you're constrained on download.
Right. Yeah, I think I computed the download. I don't have the numbers up, but yeah.
Yeah, I do have something to say, Kev. Okay. I did want to service Ansgar's comment here as the question around, having clients send out the block before the blobs. Because yeah, like we're saying, this get blobs thing doesn't actually really help without this. And I think different clients either do blobs before block or maybe some do block before blobs. But it would be nice to standardize this. Do clients have a sense of how much of a lift it would be to switch to block before blobs?
I think the builder and the relay sort of like dominate here. So I don't think it's an issue for clients. I mean, we can, but I think whatever we do is going to be mostly relevant for the network.
Just because most blocks go through relays?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gav.
But I think for the average case, average case size of a block, it's okay. Like the upload speed needed is like 3.2. It's just the worst case is not great from what I computed. Assuming you need to get the block out in, you need to send the block out to 8 peers in 2 seconds.
Enrico?
I just want to say that, yeah, Tech is already sending blocks before blobs when it's time to publish. And essentially we are doing like, so we send a block and we start blobs sending out as soon as we get the confirmation that we have successfully sent the block over at least one peer. This is the current default behavior.
Great. There's a comment, Lodestar publishes the blobs before the block. Was there a reason for doing it this way? Or would Lodestar be interested in doing it the other way?
I guess the blob before block is more on the relay side behavior, while this is more on the solo staker local building behavior side of it things.
Right, which kind of suggests you might want some way to have the relay customize versus a local builder.
Yeah, maybe it makes sense to have maybe options that says depends on who are you and which part of the network you're playing with. Having one strategy and the other one could be a good option to have on all clients.
Any other comments or questions? If not, we can go ahead and wrap the call. And everyone is very busy with Pectra. And yeah, if there's nothing else, then client releases, please have those ready by a week from now, so next ACDE. And yeah, we will get Pectra to mainnet. I think, Tim, you might have had a PSA here. Please move all your Pectra EIPs to last call.
Yes. So this way we can finalize the specs. But, yeah.
Yep. So yeah, any Pectra EIP authors, please go do that as part of the EIP process. Move the status to last call. And yeah, otherwise, I think that's it for the day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.